When an invading army marches across a border, taking the physical territory is often the easiest part of the war. To achieve total control over a newly conquered population, the victor has to infiltrate the minds of the defeated. The most effective tool for this psychological takeover is linguistic chauvinism. This is the aggressive enforcement of the belief that the conqueror's language is inherently superior, used to systematically silence and replace the native tongue of the occupied people. We can see exactly how this operates by looking at the aftermath of the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. France suffered a devastating defeat, and the victorious Prussian military, the precursor to modern Germany, marched in to enforce their new borders. As part of the surrender, the French border districts of Alsace and Lorraine were carved out and formally absorbed into the expanding Prussian Empire. A standing army can dictate where citizens walk and what taxes they pay. But by outlawing the local dialect and forcing a new language into the mouths of children, an empire dictates how the next generation thinks, permanently severing them from their heritage. In one small village in Alsace, the reality of this occupation arrived the same way all bad news had for the past 2 years, posted on the town hall bulletin board. The latest decree issued from the distant Prussian capital of Berlin was absolute. The teaching of French was strictly banned in all district schools. Starting the very next day, only German would be spoken and taught. Overnight, the vocabulary these villagers used to describe their daily lives, their histories, and their families was outlawed. A sudden, chilling vacuum was forced upon the community. With the arrival of this single administrative decree, the quiet village schoolhouse immediately becomes the primary target for cultural erasure. On the morning this order takes effect, a young student named Franz arrives late for class. He expects the usual chaotic bustle of scraping desks and loud recitations, but instead he finds the schoolyard dead silent, as quiet as a Sunday morning. Up until this exact morning, Franz hated his lessons. He viewed his grammar and history books as heavy, pointless burdens, and he regularly skipped class to spend his days outdoors. Look at this excerpt from the story. This is the moment his teacher, Monsieur Hamel, makes the devastating announcement. Because of the decree from Berlin, a new master arrives tomorrow. This will be their final French lesson. The news hits the boy like a thunderclap. In an instant, the very textbooks Franz had viewed as a nuisance transform into indispensable old friends that he simply cannot bear to part with. It is a harsh truth of human nature. People routinely coast through life taking their freedoms for granted, only recognizing the absolute necessity of their heritage at the precise moment they are stripped of it. The gravity of the loss brings the entire community into the classroom. Monsieur Hamel is dressed in his finest Sunday coat, and the former mayor and village elders sit mournfully in the back row, silently paying their respects to a country that is no longer theirs. Hamel doesn't scold his students for slacking off. Instead, he points out that the entire village shares the blame. They all lived under the dangerous assumption that they had plenty of time, allowing their education to drift until it was too late. He explains that while an empire can seize every physical resource, they cannot easily dismantle a shared language. For an occupied people, their mother tongue remains the one internal connection to their identity that no guard can confiscate. Under military occupation, grammar rules and vocabulary lists shed their innocence. Teaching the native language becomes an act of quiet, persistent resistance against assimilation. The heavy silence of the lesson is broken when the church clock strikes 12. Right outside the windows, the harsh blare of Prussian trumpets signals the return of the occupying soldiers from their drills. The French era in Alsace is officially over. Standing at the front of the room, Monsieur Hamel is entirely overcome with emotion. Unable to speak a single word, he turns to the chalkboard, presses into the slate with all his might, and writes, "Vive la France." With a simple gesture of his hand, the school is dismissed. The students and elders file out the door, walking directly into a new reality of strict foreign rule and bitter subjugation. They leave behind the physical freedom they once ignored. Moving forward, their mental resolve and the hidden internal memory of the words they used to speak are the only weapons they have left to carry into the future. Alphonse Daudet's story documents the specific mechanics used by empires to dismantle a population's culture from the inside out. It is not just a period piece about 1870. It is a demonstration of how cultural erasure is engineered. His work highlights the deep vulnerability of cultural identity. It reminds us that the ability to learn, to read, and speak your language freely are immense privileges, not guaranteed rights. A military can claim victory by seizing the land, but the conquest is only complete when the language of the defeated is erased from the map. Against that kind of overwhelming power, choosing to remember your mother tongue is the ultimate act of rebellion.